You don't love her. You're just trying to patch a piece of your soul that's been broken for a long time with a smile that was never yours. You call it destiny. Jung calls it unconscious projection. I call it the sweetest and cruelest psychological trap. You think you're choosing to love, but in truth, it was your wound that chose her. She did nothing wrong, but neither are you free, because deep down you don't see a person, you're only seeing a symbol, wearing the face of your mother of lack of a loneliness you never dared to name. And when she leaves, you collapse, not because you lost her, but because you lost the part of yourself you never had the courage to face. This is not a how to love video. This is a wake-up call for men who love from their wounds, not from a conscious soul. If you've ever been emotionally manipulated, if you've ever called pain chemistry, if you've ever begged for a glance while abandoning yourself, then it's time to walk through this door, to see the truth, to end the cycle, and reclaim the soul you traded away for a hug. She walked into your life like a warm breeze. That look made you feel like you were finally seen. That sentence felt like someone finally understood you. You called it love, but in truth, it was projection. A part of your soul, lost since childhood, just found a breathing mirror. You don't love her. You love the feeling of existing when she looks at you. You love the salvation you think you can't give yourself. You love the feeling of love, but you don't really see who you're loving. Jung calls it projection, an unconscious mechanism where your mind casts the unlived part of you onto someone who smiles, who hugs, who makes your heart race. She becomes the muse, the gentle mother you never had, the savior who rescues you from the cold inside. But no one can play that role forever. Sooner or later, the image shatters. She will hurt you, not out of malice, but because you gave her a role no one can sustain. And when it all falls apart, you call it heartbreak. But deeper, it's the collapse of an illusion you've chased all your life without knowing it never existed. This is the first invitation. Dare to face the truth that maybe you've never truly loved a real person. You've just been trying to love yourself through someone else's face. Inside every man, there is a woman, not of flesh and blood, but of emotion, intuition, sensitivity, and a longing for connection. Carl Jung calls her anima, the unconscious feminine part of your psyche, even though you were never taught to understand, accept, or love that part. Anima doesn't show up as an abstract idea. She has a shape, a voice, very real feelings. She lives in the dream you once had of the ideal woman. She whispers every time you see a beautiful woman and feel hypnotized. And if you're not aware of her, she will live in you by projecting herself onto others, onto the woman you just met at the coffee shop, onto the ex you still can't forget, onto the woman who makes you feel finally understood. But that's not her. That's you, seeing your anima in someone else's body. And when this happens, you are no longer free. You no longer know why you love. You can't tell the difference between real connection and illusion. You don't love her. You're being possessed by your unintegrated feminine. This is not a moral problem. This is a spiritual problem. It's a piece of your soul wandering, and you, unconsciously, are searching for yourself in someone else's eyes. She didn't come to love you. She came to reflect the part you abandoned. And only when you realize that, do you begin the journey to reclaim your soul. You don't choose who you love. Your psyche chooses. And what it picks is often not that person, but the image you believe they are. This is how projection works. An unconscious mechanism so powerful, it makes you swear your life to someone that you haven't even truly seen their soul. You see her as gentle because you're starving for gentleness. You see her as different because you desperately want to escape your boring life. You see her as your destined muse because deep inside you're falling into a soul void that's never been filled. Every intense emotion, every sudden crush is usually not a sign of true love, but a signal that projection is happening. And projection is the most dangerous thing because it makes you love an illusion but suffer from the truth. When she's no longer gentle, you think she changed, but in fact the image in your mind just broke. When she's no longer ideal, you feel betrayed. But really you betrayed yourself by forcing her to live out your anima's role. The problem isn't her. The problem is ignorance. When you think you're in love, but you're just sleepwalking inside a psychological movie. And then you suffer because every projection will eventually fade. Because the beauty in your mind can never withstand the light of truth. Truth doesn't hurt you. It's the illusion that shatters you. And you will repeat until you dare to call this mechanism by name: projection. Dare to look straight at the image you've hung on her face and take it down, piece by piece. Not every woman deserves the projection you hang on her, and not everyone stands still when you cast your anima onto them. There is a type of person who will exploit that projection to possess you entirely. She doesn't love you. She loves the admiration in your eyes. She loves the power you unconsciously gave her when you call manipulation deep love. That's when you step into the narcissistic trap, a dangerous zone where love becomes an invisible contract. I will give you the feeling of being loved only if you lose yourself first. She knows how to say what you need to hear. She knows how to touch your old wound, then withdraw her hand when you start depending. She gives, then takes back, pulls you close, then pushes away, gives you hope, then disappears, and you think that is love. In truth, it's unconscious codependency. You can't let go because you're addicted to that emotion, being chosen, being abandoned, being saved, then sinking into hell again. This is no longer love. This is a ruthless ritual between unintegrated anima and the shadow of a narcissistic woman. You feel exhausted, yet you cannot leave because you think, maybe I'm not good enough. No, you were more than good enough for that role. The issue is you are playing the wrong part in a play that should never be staged. And every time you say, I love her, you move farther from yourself. Want to break free? You must stop and ask the only question that matters: am I loving, or am I harming myself in the name of love? You cannot remove projection with logic, because what you projected doesn't lie in the intellect. It resides deeper in the darkness of your soul. Anima doesn't need to be rejected. She needs to be integrated, not outside in someone else's eyes, but returned inside you as a recognized part. This is the journey Jung calls individuation, the path that leads you to become yourself, not by finding the right partner, but by becoming whole. Anima, when unintegrated, leads you astray in emotions. But when integrated, she becomes powerful intuition, an inner light, a keeper of emotional truth, creativity, and connection with your real soul. You will no longer chase after love, because love has already begun inside of you. Integrating anima means daring to accept the soft, emotional, fragile part that you once felt ashamed to admit or rejected in yourself. It means daring to cry without feeling weak, daring to love without needing to be rescued, daring to connect without bending yourself to please. You will begin to look at women with equal eyes, no longer as the muse to save you, but as a soul separate just like you. You will no longer see yourself as half incomplete, because you have returned to your wholeness. And from that wholeness, every relationship you enter won't be compensation, but a meeting between two souls already full. No roles, no manipulation, no chasing illusions. That's when you no longer love to fill the void, but love to expand the light together. There is something even more dangerous than projection. It's when you know you are being manipulated, but still can't stop. This is no longer love. It's an emotional matrix, a neurological addiction triggered by dopamine, hope, and fear of loss. Every message she replies to feels like a dose. Every time you're left alone is hunger. You become a junkie inside a random reward system, where love is only a cover for subtle psychic control. You don't love anymore, you are reacting. All your actions revolve around her now, waiting, interpreting, explaining, blaming, rescuing yourself. That's when anima becomes shadow, and she externally becomes a symbol of the emotional power you once lost. You fear losing her because you think if she leaves, you'll fall back into that primal abandonment, the one you experienced in childhood. But the truth is, you don't fear losing someone else. You fear facing the emptiness inside that you never healed. To break free from this matrix, you can no longer judge her. You must turn and look at yourself. See which part of you is starved for emotional connection, which part is screaming for rescue, which part hopes someone will love you instead of you learning to love yourself first. When you awaken, the matrix collapses, the lure dissolves, the illusion shatters. You realize she is not the one who bewitched you. You are the one who placed the spell because you never believed you were worthy of standing alone. And the moment you remove that spell, you don't just free yourself from a toxic relationship. You liberate your own shadow, the part of your soul that made you kneel before love from so long ago. A man who has integrated his anima does not enter conversation to impress. He enters to meet, not meeting a muse, but meeting a person with light and shadow as he himself is. She says, "What do you think about independent women?" He does not smile to win favor. He does not react to prove he respects women. He looks at her as if looking into a living mirror and says, "I think true independence does not come from gender. It comes from whether you dare to stand alone without fearing no one will choose you." She blinks. That is not the answer she is used to, because he is not trying to be the good man. He is just being real. This is the difference when you communicate without projection. You no longer speak to be loved. You speak to understand and to be understood. You don't ask, "What do you need me to do to make you happy?" You ask, "Who are you?" when you don't have to play a role. And that question awakens the truest part of her, or makes her walk away. Whatever her reaction, you remain intact, because you didn't enter with an empty heart. You don't need to be filled. You are opening a door, not exposing your soul to beg for love. A conversation like that with no flattery, no performance. Just two people stepping out of projection to meet in reality. And that is when real love begins, if it is real. Not from desire, not from idolization, but from awareness of yourself. And the other, no illusion, no role. This is not the art of seduction. This is the art of presence. When both don't try to be something, but simply be honest to the core. You once thought, "I just need someone to genuinely love me, then I'll be okay." But the truth is that craving is what kept you never okay. Because as long as you need to be loved, you remain in a state of dependence. You lose your own center. You hand over the power to define your happiness to someone else. Every time you wish to be chosen, you step down from your own throne. Carl Jung said, "Anything we do not integrate will manifest outside as destiny." And the hunger to be loved that you haven't healed is what causes you to meet one wrong person after another. Not because you're unlucky, but because you're attracting lessons you haven't overcome. Want to rewrite your destiny? You must become self-sufficient before entering any relationship. No longer searching for someone to complete you. No longer seeking validation in others' eyes. No longer trembling at rejection. No longer playing roles to stay. You stand in the world like a fixed axis. If someone stays, it's fine. If someone leaves, it's also fine. Because you no longer need to be loved to feel whole. And then the paradox unfolds. You become the most magnetic person in the room, not because you try, but because you emit an energy that others crave: inner freedom, wholeness, a glow that needs no audience. You no longer ask, "Does she like me?" You ask, "Am I still honest with myself?" Because at the end of the day, the person you must live with for life is yourself. And only when you choose yourself will future relationships truly be choices, instead of pleas for being filled. Most men fear solitude, but what they truly fear is facing themselves when no one is around. No one to impress, no approving gaze, no gentle hand pulling them from emptiness. And in that moment, the truth emerges. You don't fear being alone. You fear being alone with nothing left to hide behind. Carl Jung calls it the shadow encounter, when you meet the part of you you've always avoided: fear, insecurity, trauma, a longing to be loved. But that place is also the gateway to real strength. You slowly learn to sit with silence without feeling lacking. You learn to eat dinner alone, yet still feel whole. You look in the mirror and no longer see someone waiting to be chosen. You see a soul who chose himself. That is not loneliness, it is sacred stillness. a space you create to reconnect with the God within. No longer disturbed by social expectations, roles, or the ideal man definition. In that space, you begin to rewrite your identity, not programmed by women's gaze or fear of abandonment, but by awareness. You don't need to be loved to live. You need to live authentically to love anyone without losing yourself. The moment you can enter darkness, without collapsing, without running, without crying out for rescue, is when your inner light begins to rise. That light nobody can give, no one can take, and needs no approval. It is the light of a free man, alone but no longer lonely, silent but no longer empty, because you have returned to yourself. You were not born to beg for love. You were not designed to be a satellite orbiting someone else's emotions. You are a sun with your own orbit, your own light, regardless of who comes and goes. When you walk through the journey of removing projection, integrating your anima, healing the wound of needing to be loved, then love, if it arrives, becomes a meeting of two free souls. No one needs to save anyone. No one needs to hold anyone. No one is the half you lack, because both are already a whole universe. You no longer fall into blind crushes. You see the other clearly, both beauty and darkness, and still choose them, but don't need them to exist. You don't say, "You are my entire life." You say, "I already have my own life, and you may walk beside me if we both guard our freedom." That is love without chains, not based on fear or lack, but based on the will to choose each other daily willingly. You don't control, you are not controlled. You don't play roles. You don't need admiration to feel worthy, because your true value doesn't come from anyone else's view. It comes from how you see yourself when no one is watching. True love doesn't make you forget yourself. It helps you remember yourself more. Doesn't throw you off course. It walks with you in the right direction, two people on parallel axes, not off center. And if one day they leave, you do not collapse. Because love is no longer a gamble of the soul. It is a gift, not a life raft. You know you can continue. No resentment, no repeating old loops, no reverting to a child begging for love. You walk on light but steady, and your light, it never goes out, because from now on, you are your own keeper. Real love begins when you don't need it to live, but you're ready to live fully even without it. That is the love of a sovereign, self-possessed, peaceful, free. This is no longer a video. This is a mirror, not for you to admire, but to reveal the wound you've kept hidden. Ask yourself, how many years have you lived as someone waiting to be chosen? How many relationships did you enter, hoping to be saved, but ended up repeating pain, heartbreak, ruin? Do you blame the other? Or is it time to look at yourself? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you shine light on the unconscious, it will continue to steer your life and you will label it as destiny." No one can save you from yourself. No relationship can fill an unhealed soul. No love will pull you out of the abyss if you haven't dared to face your own abyss. And right there, when you stop running, stop searching, stop blaming, you begin to meet what Jung called the self, the archetypal center of the entire spiritual journey, where you are no longer a missing piece, but a whole, both human and divine. This journey is not easy. It demands you shed your old skin, discard every mask, bury the inner child who once dreamed of fairy tale love, and be reborn with eyes open and a heart strong enough to stand alone. And if you get here, you are no longer the old you. You are at the threshold of true freedom, not from the outside world, but from within. Don't close this video as a pretty piece of content. Place your hand on your heart and ask, what in me is still begging to be seen? What projection do I need to take down? What fear is deciding how I love and live? Because one, if you don't look within, you'll repeat. If you don't cut the cord, you will stay in the loop. The door to truth is open. You have seen it. Now only one question remains. Do you dare to step through? If what you've just heard touched the deepest part of you, leave a comment for yourself and for someone else who needs to see this. And don't forget to subscribe to The Archetype, where each video is a wake-up shock helping you step out of illusion and return to mastery of yourself.